Senators will have to decide if they believe Donald John Trump incited the insurrection against the United States.
Tonight, Donald Trump's impeachment trial set to begin tomorrow as the Democrats reject a request from the Republicans for a delay. We'll have the latest developments and new information as we go to air. Also, President Joe Biden signs more executive orders to address the economic toll of the pandemic, including expanding food stamps for millions of Americans.
The virus is surging. Over 400,000 dead, expected to reach well over 600,000.
And later, a special report. Our reporter looks at how Trump's most loyal supporters have been dealing with his loss and Biden's inauguration, and many aren't taking it well.
Please, President Trump, please, I hope you have a plan.
A very good evening and welcome to 6 News on this Sunday evening. A lot to cover, but we begin firstly in the US, where Donald Trump's impeachment trial is set to begin tomorrow. Democrats have rejected a request from the Republicans for a delay, with several GOP senators saying they believe it is unconstitutional to hold a trial after a president leaves office. But Democrats say that the move is important to prevent the now former president from running again in the future.
Senators will have to decide if they believe Donald John Trump incited the insurrection against the United States.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden has signed more executive orders to address the economic toll of the pandemic, including expanding food stamps for millions of Americans. Biden's order allows for workers who turn down employment out of concerns about health risks amid the pandemic to qualify for unemployment benefits. But the US president says the national death toll is expected to reach well over 600,000 people.
The virus is surging. Over 400,000 dead, expected to reach well over 600,000. Families are going hungry. People are at risk of being evicted. Job losses are mounting again. We need to act. No matter how you look at it, we need to act. If we act now, our economy will be stronger in both the short and long run. That's what economists left, right, and center are telling us.
We will be back were the final parting words of Donald Trump, but his supporters are still coming to terms with the fact that their messiah no longer wields the power. Some supporters of the former president called for violence and protests in the lead-up to President Joe Biden's high-security inauguration, but those threats failed to materialize. So how have Trump supporters reacted to Biden's inauguration? Chief reporter Conrel Forquet has the story.
Obama 2013, Trump 2017, Biden 2021. Washington streets empty of protesters, overrun with law enforcement. This lone Trump supporter at the New York State Capitol expected to join thousands of other Inauguration Day protesters. There were similar empty scenes in Arizona, Nevada, Kansas. According to the FBI, extremist Trump supporters had planned violence and protests in all 50 state capitals on fringe platforms like Parler and Gab. Their threats didn't materialize on Inauguration Day. Anger was replaced with grief, denial, the question of what's next.
Please, President Trump, please, I hope you have a plan. God, please save us. Save us from the devil, please.
I'm very, very sad right now. My president has gone. And now we're forced with a dictator.
During her father's final speech, Ivanka Trump burst into tears. Others continued to deny that Joe Biden is president.
Why are you here today at the inauguration?
I believe it by supernatural God that Donald J. Trump
is the next president of the United States, that he won rightfully so, landslide, and wait and see, the goodness of God will come upon him.
Okay, I think it just happened.
That's okay.
But he just got sworn in. You hear it. You hear he just got sworn in.
He will not take the power.
But now he is president now. He just got sworn in.
Wait and see. Wait and see.
While an armed Trump supporter in Michigan conceded Trump's loss, telling the media it's time to move on. As for the right-wing media's coverage of Biden's inauguration, Newsmax didn't show the inauguration live, as guests on the program continued to push the unfounded claim that the election was rigged.
Because this is an illegitimate person, a fake candidate who didn't run a campaign, who doesn't actually have support.
Fox News, also pro-Trump, saw its ratings for the inauguration plummet by 77% from 2017.
We don't mean any disrespect to the presidency or even to the person who occupies it as if tonight when we say there's a lot going on, and so we're going to bring you news for this hour instead. We will, I think, dip in briefly as Joe Biden speaks for the first time in prime time.
Since his departure from office, the far-right have begun to turn on Trump. In private Telegram channels, several far-right groups, including the Proud Boys and QAnon communities who once supported Trump, this week blasted the former president for being a total failure and extraordinarily weak. Some members of the far-right feel let down after their Inauguration Day conspiracies failed to materialize. Others feel betrayed after Trump allegedly instigated the Capitol Hill riots, then denounced the actions of his supporters. More than 100 suspected insurrectionists have so far been arrested. A befuddling of emotions as the dwindling ranks of Trump supporters cling to his parting words with hope.
We love you. We will be back in some form.
Connor Alforque, 6 News.
Back home now, and restrictions across New South Wales are set to ease in the next week as premiers across the country begin to let Sydney-siders into their states. Daniel Andrews has reclassified a number of local government areas as orange zones as both states continue to record no new local cases. Reporter Holly Shields has the latest.
In the latest COVID news for New South Wales, there have been no new locally acquired cases recorded. This marks the state's 5th consecutive day without a local transmission of the virus. However, one new case, an overseas arrival in hotel quarantine, has been reported. COVID tests have seen a significant decrease since the last reporting period, with only 11,000 being taken compared to the previous 17,000. The reason for this discrepancy lies in 6,000 tests experiencing a delay due to a minor IT issue on the part of New South Wales Health. Experts have expressed concern over the state's low testing rates and have encouraged those with even the mildest of symptoms to come forward and get tested. With that being said, things are looking up for New South Wales, with plans in motion to ease restrictions thanks to steadily low case numbers. It's hoped that reopening the state will soon be a reality due to the successful containment of the virus following various outbreaks. Residents can expect restrictions to be eased to pre-Avalon cluster conditions, provided there is an increase in testing and community transmission remains low. Greater Sydney residents wanting a trip to Victoria are in luck, as interstate travel has gotten the green light as of 6 p.m. on Saturday. However, travellers from certain areas are still required to undergo testing within 72 hours of arrival. The relaxed border restrictions come alongside a downgrade in classification of COVID alerts. Blacktown, Canada Bay City, Burwood, Canterbury, Bankstown, Fairfield, Inner West, Parramatta and Strathfield are no longer red zones but are now classified as orange zones. Meanwhile, wider New South Wales is now a green zone according to Victorian health authorities. For travellers to Victoria, this means that unless symptoms develop, no testing is required upon arrival.
Google has threatened to cut its search engine to anyone in Australia if a proposed media bargaining code becomes law. The legislation aims to force digital platforms to pay media companies for news content. and follows a 12-month review into Google and Facebook by the competition watchdog. Facebook also appeared at the Senate hearing, repeating its threat that having to pay for news could see the content blocked altogether for Australian users. It's understood that the inquiry will hear from a number of major news organisations, including the ABC, SBS, Nine, News Corp, The Guardian Australia and AAP.
Australia makes our rules for things you can do in Australia. That's done in our parliament, it's done by our government, and that's how things work here in Australia. And people who want to work with that in Australia, you're very welcome. But we don't respond to threats.
Media executives say the code is essential for the survival of independent journalism, with the industry severely struggling due to the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. British scientists say they have discovered the emerging evidence that the new mutant strain of coronavirus may be 30% more deadly. While the strain was already revealed to be up to 70% more transmissible than the original virus, a group of scientists advising Downing Street have found the new strain might also increase the death rate by about 30%. National Cabinet recently slashed the number of citizens allowed into Australia over fears the variant would spread rapidly in the community if it escaped hotel quarantine. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he will not toughen lockdown measures in response, but did flag extra border controls over concern about the other variants first detected in South Africa and Brazil. With Australia Day just days away, a new 6 News poll suggests that almost 84% of people want the date to change. This January 26 marks 233 years since the first fleet landed in Port Jackson. But many say they want the date to change, saying it should be the day of mourning that signals the European invasion after more than 60,000 years of Indigenous occupation. It comes as the PM faces backlash for saying the date wasn't particularly flash for those on the First Fleet.
I was simply saying this, Australia is more than 25 million stories, more than 25 million. And each of us here can trace our own stories back into our experience in Australia, Indigenous Australians, First Nations people also. All the stories are important, all the stories should be respected. And on Australia Day, that's an opportunity to do that. Understanding the loss, the gains, the successes, the failures, the hardships that were encountered. Australian stories are unique in this country. But the thing that I celebrate most about Australians, despite the hardship, whether that be that of dispossession and the terrible disease and destruction that was faced by First Nations peoples, or whether it's the convicts who came or the settlers that followed, the immigrant waves that come over the course of our nation's history. All of those stories are important. They're not competing with each other. They're just part of who we are.
And you can let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. But that is 6 News for this very busy Sunday evening. Of course, you can stay up to date on all of our socials for the latest breaking news. That's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For now though, I'm Darby Travers. Thanks for your company. Good night.